Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The faint sound of a siren echoed through the quiet, fog-laden streets of Maplewood. It was the kind of small town where doors would remain unlocked, and neighbors felt safe enough to share meals uninvited. But on that fateful Saturday morning in October, the eerie stillness was shattered by the sight of police cruisers clustered around a yellow Victorian house on the corner of Willow Creek Lane. Officers moved with precision, the cold bite of autumn air contrasting sharply with the weight of the grim task at hand. Behind the rusted iron gate and the home's peeling lattice trellises, a harrowing discovery awaited. A body had been found, a young woman barely in her 20s. Lifeless amidst the remnants of what was once a lively abode. As the coroner's van arrived, its arrival a silent acknowledgement of the tragedy. The sun began to rise slowly, casting long shadows over the scene. Inside the home, investigators roamed methodically, documenting every detail, remnants of breakfast still on the table, a half-empty cup of coffee still warm, and an open book with pages fluttering as if the last thoughts of its reader had been abruptly terminated. Detective Sarah Hale, new to the Maplewood precinct, stood at the threshold, her heart pounding in her chest. This was not the first body she had seen, but the visceral impact of murder in such a profoundly intimate space was something she had prepared for, yet never truly understood. She glanced down at her notes, her mind racing through the possible stories hidden within the walls of that Victorian house. Someone had entered, someone had taken a life, and now she was tasked with unraveling the truth from the threads of chaos. This was just the beginning, and already shadows hovered over the town she thought she knew. The victim, as the coroner's team wheeled the covered body out on a gurney, Detective Hale's eyes drifted to the living room. Now a crime scene transformed. Brightly colored throws lay strewn across the couch, remnants of a vibrant life that had once filled the space with laughter and warmth. The victim's name was Rachel Lang, a local art teacher known for her enthusiasm and deep ties to the community. Digging into Rachel's past became Hale's immediate priority. Hours later, she sat at her cluttered desk, illuminated by a flickering desk lamp. Files on Rachel's life surrounded her interviews with friends, colleagues, and family. Each account painted a portrait of a bright young woman whose passion was matched only by her kindness. Her students spoke of her infectious energy. Parents conveyed their admiration for her dedication to nurturing creativity. Yet, with each passing hour, the picturesque facade began to show cracks. Beneath the surface of her vibrant Instagram feed lay the stark turmoil of her recent life. Friends hesitated, their words hesitant, when they discussed a recent breakup. Rachel had lost her longtime partner, someone who had walked out on their future, leaving her heartbroken and reeling. The artifacts of her sorrow were evident: crumpled letters, discarded paintings that embodied her inner turmoil, all left behind in her vividly decorated studio. Hale's hands trembled slightly as she picked up a photograph of Rachel, her carefree smile immortalized in a moment of joy. It was disquieting to imagine this shining spirit reduced to statistics, one amongst countless others taken too soon. But in Maplewood, the community had always come together in times of sorrow. Now, cradled within the embrace of loss, was the haunting question: who could want to harm someone so beloved? As night draped its mantle over the town, Hale glanced out the window, her resolve hardening. Somewhere in the shadows lay the answers, and she intended to find them. A crime scene. The next morning, the sun broke through the lingering fog, but Detective Hale's sense of dread remained unshakable as she arrived at the crime scene again. The Victorian house stood stoically, its weathered exterior reflecting the turbulent emotions now infesting the space within. Yellow tape fluttered in the brisk air, a stark reminder that while life continued outside, sorrow and suspicion haunted those walls. Hale donned a pair of blue latex gloves and stepped inside, her senses heightened. Each creak of the wooden floorboards echoed like a warning. She methodically retraced the path taken by investigators the day before, mentally searching for anything that had been overlooked. The living room bore the scars of a struggle. The coffee table had been toppled, and splintered remnants of pottery littered the floor artifacts of Rachel's creative hobby, turned into weapons in the dance of chaos that had transpired. Walking through the narrow hallway, Hale felt a chill as she entered the bedroom. The bed was unmade, a careless array of crumpled linens. A notebook lay open on the nightstand, filled with half-finished sentences and sketches. Words jotted down in desperation intertwined with imagery of swirling colors seemed to reflect Rachel's state of mind. What words had gone unsaid in the final moments of her life? Hale could only imagine the fear that may have gripped Rachel in her last minutes. A flicker of movement caught Hale's attention, a small door at the end of the room, leading to the bathroom. She pushed it open, finding a space modestly adorned yet plagued by darkness. The mirror, framed with intricate carvings, bore a sheen of steam, indicating someone had rushed to shower. A few disheveled toiletries lined the sink, but it was the half-closed cabinet that drew her in. As she opened it, a series of small vials and pills greeted her. Prescription bottles, each stamped with Rachel's name, revealed a struggle against anxiety that had likely intensified with the fallout of her recent breakup. This was no longer just a story of murder, it was a deep dive into the burdens of mental health, the rising tides of despair that could lead a person to dark moments. As she stepped back, considering the weight of the situation, Hale knew one thing. Rachel's struggle wasn't an isolated event. In this quiet town, everyone had a story, and it was slowly becoming clearer that someone was hiding their own, tangled amongst the tragedies of the past. The early investigation. The following days unfolded in a blur, a whirlwind of visits, phone calls, and uncomfortable conversations threading together to form a tapestry of grief and suspicion. Detective Hale quickly established a cadence of interviews with those who had known Rachel, hoping to draw out the sorrow from their memories and uncover the animosity that had led to her untimely demise. Her first stop was the local cafe, a bustling establishment where the townsfolk congregated, sharing laughter and rumors over steaming cups of coffee. It was there that Rachel had often met friends each Saturday morning, the aroma of fresh pastries mixing with the warmth of camaraderie. Hale slipped into a corner booth and took a moment to observe those who gathered, noting the hesitant glances and quiet whispers that danced around the room. When she approached Lisa, a close friend of Rachel's who clutched her coffee like a lifeline, Hale immediately sensed a layer of remorse. "It just doesn't make sense," Lisa murmured, her voice thick with emotion. She was so vibrant, so full of life, but ever since Evan left, she'd been struggling. I didn't know how much. Evantha name echoed within the confines of Hale's mind, igniting a flicker of anger. The relationship had evidently left scars deeper than anyone had previously acknowledged. As Lisa spoke of Rachel's descent into solitude post-breakup, Hale scribbled notes, each revelation weaving a tale of heartbreak intermingling with unspoken tensions. With every interview, fragments of Rachel's world began to take shape. Her parent nature, but also the lingering presence of an ex who had vanished without a trace, offering no closure. It became increasingly clear that Rachel had not only battled her inner demons, but had been left vulnerable by those who had once been her steadfast ally. Determined to uncover the truth, Hale reached out to the police in Evan's last known location, a neighboring town, where he'd sought refuge after abandoning Rachel. As the call connected, she could sense the growing urgency in her voice. Unraveling the mystery behind Evan could reveal whether he was merely a ghost or a potential suspect in Rachel's demise. The images of a life cut short clung to Hale's thoughts as she returned to her car, the intensity of the investigation building like a gathering storm. The truth, she understood, lay not just in findings, but in the fractures of the lives irrevocably altered by loss. And she was just beginning to peel back the layer. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks, and the early momentum of the investigation began to wane. Detective Hale found herself confronting a series of dead ends that felt increasingly frustrating. Rachel's friends were distraught, but offered little more than the same accounts, their memories clouded by grief and confusion. In the face of sorrow, many seemed unwilling or unable to dig deeper into their feelings, as if protective barriers were hindering the quest for justice. The canvassing of the neighborhood revealed little. Neighbors either hesitated to speak or offered vague glimpses of Rachel's routine, which appeared uneventful and unremarkable before the tragedy that shattered it. A few remembered seeing odd visitors, but their descriptions were maddeningly vague. Short, dark hair, light hair. Together, they painted a fuzzy image of someone who might have been the spark for Rachel's demise, yet nothing conclusive materialized. Hale's breakthrough with Evan, the estranged boyfriend, had turned into yet another brick wall. He was nowhere to be found. His previous landlord in Maplewood confirmed he had terminated his lease shortly after their breakup, leaving no forwarding address. A visit to the local bars and clubs where he might have sought solace turned up nothing. Patrons recalled an Evan but could not provide clarity on his whereabouts, calling into question the reliability of their memories. Frustrated, she returned to the crime scene once more, seeking answers in the contours of Rachel's life. As she wandered through the hallway once again, a moment of clarity washed over her as she noted an untouched art piece lying against the wall. It was a large canvas, painted in bright colors, depicting a figure standing at a distance, arms raised toward an undefined horizon. Why had it been left behind? It seemed to echo a longing for freedom, a wish to escape. Hale's instinct pressed her to investigate Rachel's circle of colleagues further, seeking insights into other relationships that may have flourished or withered around her. Perhaps these interactions contained key elements Hale had overlooked: arising animosities, professional rivalries, or hidden friendships. Desperate for clarity, she picked up her phone to make yet another call, praying this time would yield the insight needed to breathe new life into a case that was growing cold. As the evening sun dipped behind the trees, Hale's resolve solidified. She refused to let Rachel become a mere statistic. She had a life to honor and a story that begged to be told. But it was becoming evident that to unravel this tale of love and loss, she would have to dig deeper into the shadows where others feared to tread. A break in the case. Late one evening, while sifting through stacks of initial reports, Hale received a text that would shift the momentum of the investigation. It was from Officer Brooks, a patrolman who had taken an interest in Rachel's case. He had stumbled upon a witness who claimed to have seen something unusual on the night of Rachel's murder. His message struck like a bolt of lightning, energizing the weary detective. "Meet me at the precinct. I have a leaded red." Arriving at the precinct, Hale found Brooks pacing the small break room, an air of urgency about him. He relayed the encounter he'd had with a resident from the apartment complex near Rachel's home, a place that had been overlooked during the initial canvassing. The witness, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, had been taking his nightly walk with his dog when he noticed a figure lingering outside the Victorian house. "I thought it was odd," Brooks explained, his voice steadying with excitement. "The way they kept looking around like they didn't want to be seen." According to Mr. Thompson, the figure had left shortly before the police arrived, slipping into the shadows. He's not sure of the exact time, but he can provide a description. Brooks finished, a spark of hope igniting the air around them. Hale's heart raced as she reviewed the notes Brooks handed her, her mind conjuring up possibilities. They had us suspect someone floating on the periphery, a ghost waiting to surface. She motioned for Brooks to join her as they prepared to follow up with the witness. They needed to squeeze every detail from Mr. Thompson, hoping each recollection would lead them closer to a name. Arriving at the modest apartment complex, Hale felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The streetlights cast a warm glow over the cracked pavement where Mr. Thompson waited, a soft smile revealing twinkling eyes that belied his weathered features. As he began to recount the events of that night, his voice trembled slightly, but his recollections were vivid. "I saw a man standing there, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He was tall, and there was something about his posture it felt wrong. He seemed nervous." As he described the man's dark clothing and the flicker of movement as he turned to leave, Hale felt the picture solidify. This was the first substantial clue that promised to unravel the mystery surrounding Rachel's final moments. Armed with this new information, Hale's resolve crystallized. He had a description, a possible timeline, and the beginnings of a lead again. The shadows that cloaked Rachel's life threatened to give way to the light of understanding. The detective knew they needed to act quickly. With the night ahead of them, they were prepared to chase down every detail, ready to confront the darkness that haunted Maplewood. The suspect, with a description in hand, the search for the man who had emerged from the shadows began in earnest. Detective Hale and Officer Brooks spent the next few days combing through police records, examining past incidents in the area that might match the unsettling figure described by Mr. Thompson. The process was laborious, requiring patience as they sifted through reports of petty thefts and disturbances, hoping to find a thread that linked back to their suspect. It was on a rainy Thursday afternoon that the storm of leads began to converge. Brooks had been working the phones, reaching out to local businesses with surveillance cameras that might have captured a figure resembling their suspect on the night of the murder. His persistence paid off when a camera from a nearby convenience store showed a clear image of a man darting past just minutes after the estimated time of Rachel's death. The grainy footage showed a tall figure wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, the hood pulled low over his face, As Hale reviewed the clips carefully, Amy Stroud, the store manager, chimed in, her voice shaky. "That man comes in here sometime. He's a regular, but I never really talked to him. Just saw him buying snacks late at night. His name's Jesse." A name. Finally. Hale felt the electric thrill of progress hum in her veins. With Jesse's image and the newfound identification, they dug deeper into his background. What they found painted a troubling picture, an arrest record spanning several years, mostly for petty crimes, and a history of substance abuse. But it was his last address that struck Hale like a punch to the gut. Jesse lived just a few blocks from Rachel's home. Quickly, they gathered enough information to follow through. Plans were made for Hale and Brooks to pay Jesse a visit, armed with the knowledge of his past and a determination to learn if he had been in Rachel's orbit. Was he simply a troubled man caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or had he been drawn into something far darker? As they approached Jesse's building, a sense of foreboding washed over Hale. The place was run down, the hallway dimly lit as they climbed to the second floor, the air thick with a damp chill. She knocked on the door firmly, her heart racing as they waited for a response. After a moment that felt interminable, shuffling footsteps approached from within. When the door creaked open, Hale was confronted by a gaunt figure with sunken eyes, unshaven and disheveled. Jesse blinked in the doorway, confusion mingling with unease as he took in the badges. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his voice betrayed a hint of apprehension. Hale stepped forward, her mind focused and resolute. "We need to talk, Jesse. It's about Rachel Lang." She watched his face, searching for any flicker of recognition or denial. The moment had arrived, and the truth hung in the air like an unspoken confession. The trial. Months had passed since Jesse's arrest, but the weight of Rachel's case hung heavily over the community. The town of Maplewood had transformed, now marked by the haunting memory of their lost artist and the challenge of seeking justice for her. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as locals filed in, eager to witness the trial that would inevitably draw the curtain on the mystery that had gripped their lives. As Detective Hale took her place amongst the spectators, she felt a familiar mix of anxiety and resolve. The prosecution had built a strong case against Jesse, meticulously assembling evidence that pointed to him as the last one seen near Rachel's home on the fateful night. Fingerprints found on her belongings and circumstantial evidence from the convenience store. Footage painted a damning picture. But defense attorney Mark Larson was relentless, determined to fracture the prosecution's narrative and cast doubt on the evidence presented. With the trial officially underway, the gallery was filled with familiar faces, friends of Rachel, colleagues, and local artists, whose lives had been touched by the young woman's spirit. Each face bore the imprint of sorrow, their hearts echoing the unfulfilled promise of Rachel's potential. As Hale glanced around, she caught Lisa's eye, the grief apparent in her furrowed brow. They were united in the hope of justice, yet fearful of what a jury's decision might entail. The prosecution's star witness, Mr. Thompson, testified first. Speaking with quiet conviction, he recounted the haunting sight of a man loitering outside Rachel's home, providing a chilling relatability to the case that sent a shiver through the audience. Hale held her breath, feeling the urgency of his recollection resonate throughout the room. But Larson was prepared. He skillfully dismantled Thompson's testimony, suggesting that the man's memory could be flawed, unreliable due to the haze of age. His approach was to pivot the focus onto Rachel, suggesting she might have known her murderer, playing with the notion of a twisted relationship. It was a gamble, and the murmurs in the gallery hinted at the wavering sense of certainty. As the trial progressed, evidence of Jesse's troubled past emerged, which the defense wielded like a weapon. They painted him as a lost soul, a victim of circumstance who didn't deserve the harsh scrutiny of murder charges. The defense's strategy was clear: create doubt in the jury's mind about not only Jesse's motive, but also the reliability of the evidence presented. Hale felt the tension seep into her bones as she watched Jesse, a man cloistered in a frame of despair, shifting in his seat. There was something unsettling about how he wore that disheveled demeanor, almost as if he were a sacrificial pawn in a game far larger than any of them could fathom. As the prosecution prepared to call its final witnesses, Hale couldn't help but silently plead with the jury as they delivered their verdict. This case transcended the walls of the courtroom. It was about the memory of Rachel Lang and ensuring that her story was honored with the truth. Days later, as the jury took its seat, a hush fell over the room, tempered by the gravity of their decision. Hale held her breath, awaiting what felt like the precipice between justice and allowing another life to slip through the cracks. The aftermath. As the verdict echoed through the courtroom, silence swallowed the room whole. We find the defendant, Jesse Harris, guilty of second-degree murder, the foreman declared, followed by a collective exhale from the crowd. Detective Hale felt her heart race. A rush of relief washed over her, while tears welled in the eyes of Rachel's friends, an entire community grasping the fragile concept of justice. Even within the somber confines of the courtroom, the weight of grief lingered alongside the sense of closure. Hale watched as Rachel's friends and family embraced, an emotional release that stitched together the whale-like rift left by her absence. But as the clapping of hands faded and reality set in, a hollow echo remained. Guilty. They had retrieved a measure of justice, but another consideration loomed, larger ripple effects of violence upon the neighbor. In the days following the trial, as Jesse's sentencing hearing approached, Maplewood began to reopen its doors. The townspeople emerged tentatively from their grief, seeking to reconcile the shadows that had shrouded the small town for far too long. Art exhibits featured works inspired by Rachel's legacy, and local gatherings commemorated her life rather than her death, transforming sorrow into purpose. Hale watched the community rally together, transforming the profound loss into a celebration of creativity and resilience. But the pain was not erased. Hale encountered members of the community who still spoke of their fears, unsure if they could ever fully trust again. Furtive glances passed amongst neighbors. Whispers of, "Could it happen again?" colored their conversations. Crime had a way of penetrating even the tightest-knit communities, and while justice had been served, the scars were slow to heal. As the weeks turned into months, Hale found herself grappling with the complexities of her purpose. The case was not just about exposing the truth, but also understanding the many faces of anguish hidden beneath the surface. She began organizing community dialogues, inviting townsfolk to share their feelings and experiences in a series of open forums. Through these discussions, a shared understanding blossomed, a recognition of vulnerability amongst neighbors that broke down barriers. Then came the day of Jesse's sentencing. As she walked into the packed courtroom, Hale felt the weight of all that had transpired since Rachel had breathed her last. Jesse stood before the judge, his demeanor still tumultuous but tinged with resignation. As the gavel descended, marking the sentence, Hale reflected on the delicate dance between justice and closure, the intense reality that victory often felt like a Pyrrhic win. Later, as she stood at the local park where Rachel once hosted art classes, bathed in the warmth of autumn, Hale found solace among the vibrant display of ideas and creativity birthed in Rachel's memory. In honoring Rachel, the town had not only begun to heal, but had forged a path forward, one where each brushstroke represented not only loss, but an enduring legacy. As she watched children giggling and drawing with chalk on the pavement, Hale felt hope swell within her. In the aftermath of darkness, community was a canvas, waiting eagerly to be filled with stories of resilience, love, and the transformative power of art. For the town of Maplewood, new beginnings were possible. The shadows still lingered, but the light would shine through, illuminating paths of healing that beckoned across the horizon. Reflection. Seated on a weathered park bench, Detective Hale gazed across the landscape transformed by the gentle hand of change. The park thrummed with life, children laughing, families gathering, and artists transforming blank canvases into vivid expressions of the human experience. Each brushstroke and joyful giggle echoed the legacy of Rachel Lang, a tale of loss intertwined with a communal resurgence that pulsed through Maplewood's heart. As she reflected on the case that had consumed so much of her thoughts and energy, Hale realized that while justice had been sought, the path to healing was a collective journey. The conversations she had initiated among neighbors began to foster connections, weaving a tighter fabric that would fortify Maplewood against future shadows. The pain of Rachel's absence was inscribed deeply in their shared history. Yet it had also birthed an awakening, a desire to confront their vulnerabilities and emerge strong. Closing her eyes for a moment amidst the sun-dappled leaves, Hale recalled the intimate moments spent with Rachel's friends, their raw honesty about grief, love, and loss. Those heartfelt exchanges had illuminated the often overlooked truths of life in a small town, where everyone craves connection yet fears the fragility that comes with it. Looking forward, there was still much work to be done. Memories of the violent act would linger, but resilience had rooted itself within the community's psyche. Hale stood from the bench, determination igniting her spirit once more. The call for justice may have led her here, but the mission became clearest, supporting healing, nurturing hope, and empowering the voices that might otherwise remain unheard. In the delicate balance between sorrow and triumph, light could still break through, illuminating the path forward in her beloved Maplewood.